Hey everybody. So good evening, good evening, good evening. I am excited to get into this broadcast. I'm going to give it a couple of minutes a couple of seconds for folks to get on in here so we can have this chat. As you can tell by the title, it's a very diverse broadcast tonight. I'm going to be covering some things y'all know. I'm from Tennessee and what's happening there. Those things and the healthcare situation there still matters greatly to me. And so I'm going to be talking about that a little bit, some things that you may or may not be aware of, some recent things that happened in articles. I also have an update on the color-coded badges with regard to Ballad and some changes with the COPA and things like that. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about the rapper DaBaby made some comments during his Rolling Out performance. And I've seen some people try to justify this. I'm actually going to play that for you. And we're going to talk a little bit about that and why, in fact, I do think that it was homophobic and there's no other way to spin it. Hey, what's up, Mama? How are you? And then in addition to that, we're going to talk about the very first former cardinal of the Catholic Church was charged for sexually assaulting a man when he was 14 years old. We're going to talk a little bit about the Catholic Church and its history of child molestation, sexual assault. And I think that some of the numbers are going to astound you. So those are the three things that we're going to be talking about tonight. I actually had more, but we've got 1 hour together, so I don't want to skip over that. Hey, Gina, how are you? Nice to see you this evening. So let's go ahead and let's start talking a little bit about Ballad Health, about Northeast Tennessee, Southwest Virginia, that entire region. So remember that region encompasses about 1.2 million people, and we know that it is Tennessee as a whole is a very red state from a political perspective, right? Hey, Jessica, how are you? Good to see you as well. And, typically the position, according to the data, right, what we know is the states that are more Republican or more red tend to have lower vaccination rates, right? So I think as a country, we're right at about 49% of us have been vaccinated. But I was reading some articles today on WJHL site, WCYB site, and some things where they talked to Ballad Health and Alan Levine, and I read some numbers today that just astounded me. So we're going to start there, okay? And so I'm going to post my comments here, and hopefully they're going to come through. Notice I said hopefully. And if not, we're gonna see. So, Kia, I am not surprised when you say you had a horrible experience with Nicewonger about a week and a half ago. I talked a little bit about the Nicewonger NICU and staffing issues and patient to nurse ratios, nurse to baby ratios on Monday, hit me up and hey, Jeff and Renee, hit me up and I'll see if I can help give you a little bit of direction in terms of like where you need to go or what you need to do. So let me go ahead and dive right on into this Ballad Health thing. And everybody thinks that I quote unquote hate Ballad. That's not the case. I'm not a fan of its leadership. I'm not a fan of the fact that it's a state created medical monopoly. I'm not a fan of the spin that they use the media for. I am not a fan of a lot of the practices that they do. However, when it comes to public this issue around COVID-19, I am more aligned and inclined to agree with their push and their desire to have people vaccinated, right? Because it's a public health issue. And I know there are people who disagree with me, and it's fine that you disagree with me. But I'm going to talk about that from a healthcare perspective and the impact on the COPA. So I don't know if you guys are aware of this or not, and I was made aware of it in May, but I wasn't broadcasting then. So I'm not sure if you all are aware that in May of 2021, the Tennessee Department of Health said, hey, listen, Ballad, there's a global pandemic. So we're going to suspend requirements for you to spend millions of dollars that you committed to spend. That was the reason we gave you this COPA to start with, right? We're going to say, nope, you don't have to do those things. And what's interesting about what they said is the letter from the state says that these COPA commitments, these requirements for the COPA, are suspended during the pandemic and, I quote, a reasonable period of recovery thereafter. So a reasonable period of recovery. Well, what is that, right? I tend to think it means they're probably not going to come back. I really don't think they are. And after reading Alan's interviews this week, yesterday, there are going to I did see that, Brad. So Brad is asking me, Brad Hauser says, did you see this Ballad doctor telling people not to get the vaccine at a youth conference? So let me just say this. There are several physicians that are associated with Ballad Health that are part of this freedom tour, that are telling people that are openly saying, nope, don't get vaccinated. And that's a problem, right? Because the position that the healthcare system is taking, and this is where it's so dangerous. So the position that Ballad has taken is, hey, yes, we think people need to be vaccinated, right? We want our staff to be vaccinated. We think that this is what should happen. However, we will not make it mandatory for our staff because we are afraid that we will lose more staff, right? And we have this Delta variant that is coming hard and fast. So let me go back. So the Department of Health, the Tennessee Department of Health, has said to Ballad, listen, you don't have to do this. These commitments that you made to the public and to the community, these things that you said you were going to do, that $308 million, million dollars that you're supposed to spend over 10 years. You don't have to do that right now. And matter of fact, you don't have to do that until, I don't know, whenever. So, you're screwed. Folks back home, you're screwed. And, I told you guys, hey, Shelly, I said to you when COVID happened, that Ballad was going to be able to use the pandemic. And I am not saying that COVID-19 has not negatively impacted Ballad Healthcare. I'm not saying that at all, because of course it has. It's a global pandemic. This is a healthcare company. And, everyone has taken a hit. What I am saying is that because of the things that Ballad was doing prior to the pandemic, they're in a worse position now than before. So, for example, if you hadn't come in and topped out nurses' pay, if you hadn't come in and bullied your staff, if you hadn't come in and made all these changes to benefits and requirements and all of these things and closed down the NICU, if you hadn't done a lot of the things that you've done, you most likely would not have had the mass exodus of personnel that you have had prior to the pandemic. Okay, that's first. So now that you have this global pandemic on top of that, and you are ingrained in politics to such a degree, and you don't have, so listen, folks, if you have real leadership in your healthcare system, your employees buy in to the health and well-being of the staff, of the community, and they follow you, they get behind their leadership. When Alan Levine has to say to reporters that he's scared to make vaccinations mandatory for the staff, even though healthcare systems like Mayo and Yale and Duke are issuing and have issued mandatory vaccinations, when he says he's too scared to do that because he's afraid to lose more nurses in front of this next round of COVID coming, That tells me it's indicative of the leadership in the healthcare system. It's indicative of the relationship that you have with your staff. It's indicative of your position internally, and the information that you are sharing, right? So when you say, hey, we've got nurses who are already tired because they saw so many COVID patients and whatever. And then you still have staff that work at your hospital who are saying, nope, we're not getting vaccinated. That's a disconnect internally, right? And so now what you have on top of that is a COPA commitment, the COPA commitments that are suspended till who the hell knows when, right? You have staff that may or may not be vaccinated, right? My understanding is that they, in fact, were given color-coded badges yesterday. And from what I've been told by my source in this one department, that is that when they were given the badges, the supervisor or person who was giving them out had a list of the people who had been vaccinated and said, here, put this on. Now, what Ballad Health told news organizations and like Becker Hospital Review is they said it was going to be voluntary. My understanding and the way that staff interpreted it is that it wasn't voluntary to wear the badge. So I don't really know, but it's kind of pointless anyway if you're not going to make it mandatory, right? So what's going to happen at this point? Because let me just share this with you. Let me give you some statistics. According to, let me see if this is the article. Yes, listen to this. According to News Center 5 WCYB, I'm going to give you this link and I'm going to put it in the comments. According to this article, 95%, y'all listen to this number, 95% of the region is not vaccinated. 95% of the folks back home in Northeast Tennessee and Southwest Virginia are not vaccinated. According to this News Center 5 article, here's what it says. It says, let me back up a couple of lines. It says the Delta variant has caused hospitalizations to more than double in July. So on July 3rd, there were 20 Ballad Health hospitalizations. As of the 24th, there were 46. So it went from 20 people being hospitalized due to COVID complications to 46 in just the last, 3 weeks, okay? And here's what it says. Ballad Health officials now expect to reach 125 to 150 hospitalizations by October. And they go on to say people are getting sicker quicker, ending up hospitalized in just a day or two instead of a week later. And get this, the spread is aided by our region's very low vaccination rate. 95% of the patients, not the people, let me issue that correction. 95% of the patients are not vaccinated. So when people say to me, well, if you're vaccinated, you can still get COVID. True. So yeah, let me make sure I make that distinction. It's not 95% of the region, because I think Washington County is leading, but it's also Washington County is the more progressive county in the area. Washington County has like 40-something% vaccinated. But of the people being hospitalized, of the people who are being treated for COVID by Ballad Health, 95% are not vaccinated. So even if you are vaccinated and you're getting COVID, you are most likely not going to be hospitalized. You know, you can get the flu vaccine and still get the flu, right? But you're not going to get it as bad. It's not going to make you sick. And people say, well, we're surviving. Let me just say this, folks. We have no clue what the long-term effects of COVID are going to be. We have no clue. It will be years before it is clear the effect that this pandemic is having on our bodies long term. So the idea, this idea that, you know, it's okay, I trust my immune system, or Jesus has got me. Listen, God gave you common sense. Common sense. Right? Exactly, Jessica. Jessica says, it's strange to me to hear my friends that are nurses refuse the vaccine, right? And I've seen and heard lots of this. But here's where it gets crazy, y'all. I want you to listen to this statement that Alan made. Listen to this. It's not in this article. It is WJHL's article. So WJHL also talked to Alan Levine. Ballad Health is back to doing weekly COVID updates, which they had stopped doing for the last few months, but it's back. And this is what they said. Eric Deaton, hey, Eric. It says the week of June 13th, we diagnosed 135 people with COVID-19 across our region. By comparison, the week of July 18th through 24, we diagnosed 679 people with COVID. That's a 400% increase in just a couple of weeks. Y'all get that? Did you hear what I said? We went from the week of June 13th, diagnosing 135 people with COVID across the region, to 679 people this last week, the 18th through the 24th. Folks. And then when they say, oh, well, and this is the thing. So this is to me is when you cannot, as a healthcare organization, it is my opinion that Ballad Health should not be straddling the fence on this issue. I think this is where they take a stand because it's what's in the best interest of the people, right? So let me just say this. This other article, Clay Runnels said during this interview with WCYB, get this, now you've heard them say how much it's increased, right? Clay Runnels said, people with high-risk conditions should take more precautions, but it's not necessary to avoid going out. And now I'm reading the quote. This is what he said. You would want to try to avoid being in a closed environment with people who could be unvaccinated or infected or have symptoms. Well, follow me, right? If 38% of the state of Tennessee is not vaccinated and our region is higher than that, right? Shit, you got flip a coin. You're pretty much saying flip a coin as to whether or not that person, is gonna be vaccinated or not, right? And symptomatic, not symptomatic, that changes in a matter of hours. So, like, to me, what has to be said, so Steph the nurse says, I agree, but what if he is correct and many nurses leave because of mandatory vaccination? Well, here's what I would say. Those people maybe shouldn't be nurses. I don't know. Then you recruit. Right? Ballad assured us that recruiting would not be a problem. And if they're not having to spend the money on the COPA requirements, right? If they're not spending money, those millions of dollars for the COPA requirements, then use that money to pay nurses better. Use that money to offer incentives and hiring bonuses and retention bonuses. Listen, what I know about Ballad is that when they want to get something done, and when they want to spend money, they do, right? So if you want to ensure public safety, because here's the thing, what do you think is going to happen, Steph the nurse, if in fact the 125 to 150 cases that Ballad Health is projecting are hospitalized by October and from COVID? What do you think is going to happen? You don't think those nurses are going to quit because they can't handle any more dying? Lakia, it's not about whether or not you can catch it with or without the vaccine. Everybody says that. Of course, there are breakthrough infections. That's with every vaccine, folks. That's with every vaccine. But here's the thing. You are less likely to get it if you are vaccinated, and 95 to 97% of the people who are being hospitalized with COVID are the unvaccinated. So if getting the vaccine keeps your ass from being hospitalized and being put on a ventilator and dying, if it prevents a $50,000, $70,000, $100,000 medical bill, if getting that free vaccine does all of those things, it makes sense to get it, because even if you get it, right? Even if you get it, you are most likely to not be hospitalized because of it. Are there going to be one-off situations? Of course there are, because people have different health conditions that impact them differently, right? Seriously. Mila, because it's a public safety issue. That's why. That's why. People care because, like it or not, your choice on this issue is a matter of public health. It is a matter of public health, public safety, of economic viability. We had 93,000 people die last year. 93,000 people die over an overdose last year, which was an astronomical increase because of the devastating effect of having a global pandemic and being locked down and not having the proper resources available and human contact. All of those things matter. All of those things matter. And the bottom line is, we as people need to be concerned about more than just ourselves and what we think about this one thing concerning us. If your choice only affected you, then have at it. I wouldn't be saying anything about what you choose. But since what you choose is impacting everyone, especially the healthcare staff, then I'm going to say something. It's a public health issue. It is a public safety issue. Period. Yeah, Eric, I did get a little passionate. But I mean, I'm just saying. And listen, I'm not a Ballad Health supporter, but I am with them on this issue. Because it is in the best interest of the staff. It is in the best interest of the public. It just is. So, it's about more than just what you want. And it's about the long-term effects. I know people right now that still don't have their taste and their smell back. I know people right now that still have lung issues from having COVID a year ago. It will be years before we know the long-term effects of this disease. And people ought to be smart enough to say, okay, let's just weigh this whole thing out. But here's what I'll tell you, right? Let me just tell y'all this. If you and I know how, if we've seen, hey, Dr. DeVoe, I'm glad to see you join. And feel free. People are asking questions about like why they should be vaccinated. And so if you have information that you would like to offer up, I highly support that. Because this is my thing. I had someone on the broadcast on Monday, and I saw another post the other day where someone was equating their choice as to whether or not to get the vaccine, right? And with women's autonomy over their body. And I said it on Monday, and I'm going to say it again. A woman's autonomy over her own body is a personal choice that doesn't affect you. Her choice of what she wants to do with her body is not a public safety issue for you. Like, her decision isn't going to possibly, increase your exposure or your risk of dying, right? But when it comes to this vaccination, it is. Over 600,000 people have died in this country. They are estimating in India that the number is around 3 million. Do we not care about the lives and the health and well-being of everyone else? I care that other people have died from this. And I have an autoimmune disease, and I don't trust the government, and I daggone sure have questions around healthcare, right? Those are all things that are very real for me. And a year ago, I said, I'm not getting that vaccine. I did a year ago. Y'all heard me say that. And when I chose to go get the vaccine, I shared very publicly why I changed my mind. And I told you why I chose the one I chose. I don't trust Johnson and Johnson, right? I've seen too many of their products that cause cancer and seen them settle too many lawsuits. Two, I didn't trust Moderna, and that was just me because the funding that the government gave to Moderna, the government didn't just pay for the vaccine. They some of those funds, they were involved in the research and the development of it. No, thanks. I'm good with that. Right? Pfizer did all of their stuff their own, and the government's going to bought the vaccine from them. So I chose to get Pfizer. I could have gotten my vaccine through the VA, but they were giving Moderna. So I went through Walgreens and I got Pfizer. So Eric Honecker says, that's me. I'm 24, had COVID over a year ago, and my lungs have never been worse than they are currently. I use my inhaler at least twice a day now. I never used to. So someone tell Eric that his lungs don't matter. You know, he survived COVID, so that's enough. Someone tell him that's it. Everything else is gravy, right? You survived, Eric. Why should you care about your lungs being impacted for the rest of your life? That's virtually what you're saying. And what is the level of hypocrisy is that many of the people, thanks, Roland, many of the people who are saying they're not going to get vaccinated are people who claim to be Christian, right? Conservative Christian, that's who we are. This is what we believe, blah, 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 whatever. And it baffles me that there seems to be this disconnect with people who identify as Christians with the health and well-being of their neighbor. I thought the Bible said, love thy neighbor as thyself. I thought, right? I guess not, when it's not what you want to do, right? Any other questions about that? Obviously, I'm passionate about this, but I've seen it. I've seen it, right? I watched my brother, who had a spinal stroke at the beginning of August last year, get COVID 3 weeks later. And because that area at the base of his skull was already damaged and was already in a vulnerable condition, the disease chose to attack there. And since that time, he has had continual issues with his balance, with all kinds of things. He's had to see neurologists, and he's been hospitalized since then, I believe at least 3, if not 4 times since that. And because we don't have a lot of data about COVID and we're not sure what it's doing to the body, doctors are a little bit at a loss and behind the curve in terms of figuring out what needs to be done and how people need to be treated. So, you know, say what you want, be in your, conspiracy theory world or whatever you want. But the reality is I frankly do not want to see another 500,000 people die. I don't want to see, in your region, folks, in your region in the last week, 3 people died from COVID at Ballad Health hospitals. 3. And here's the thing. So many of you all were following me and sharing with me about your stories from being treated at Ballad and how it wasn't the best care and how things weren't clean and how there weren't enough staff. And so here's my question. If getting the vaccine could keep you out of a Ballad Health hospital, why would you not get one? Also concerning is the fact that documented pediatric COVID is causing outbreaks in summer camps. It leads to concerns about school systems approaches for the coming year. CDC should be followed in school systems. I agree. And listen, our babies need to be around each other. They need social interaction. It is what's good for them. And we also need to keep them safe. So how do we do that? How do we do that for them? How can we accomplish spacing? And frankly, not only are you making it difficult for healthcare workers, you're making it difficult for teachers. Like, their job is difficult and challenging enough without adding this on top of it. You know, trying to get little Timmy to wear a mask or socially distance. How do you socially distance when you're walking through the hall or when you're sitting in the classrooms? Just saying, folks. I will not apologize for what I'm saying, and I believe it with all of my heart. I have friends that are nurses, that are staffs. My friends that are nurses that I know of have gotten the vaccine, got it before I did. And I care about them and their experience. It's already challenging enough to be a nurse anywhere. It's already challenging enough to be a nurse, a healthcare provider in a Ballad Health hospital without adding this on top of it. And this is what happens when you politicize public health and public safety. And Ballad should not straddle the fence on this. Steph, the nurse, asked me, well, what if Alan's right and nurses do leave if they make the vaccination mandatory? Well, you know what? Take that money that you're not spending on COPA commitments and offer some bonuses, offer some retention money, you know, hire whatever, right? Add some of those funds to get the right staff. Because frankly, I have concerns about healthcare providers who don't want you to get the vaccination. I have concerns about those people, and should they actually be providers, and, you know, all of that. So we could go on and on about this, but I think I've made it clear. I've given you the information. So just so you guys know, the number of hospitalizations from July 3rd to July 24th went from 20 to 46 in Ballad Health hospitals. They're expecting that number to become between 125 and 150. They are saying, oh, this was the quote that I wanted to give you, because this is scary to me. So listen to this. I'm going to give you a little bit of this information, and I gave you one link, so I'm going to give you this one. This one is from the WJHL article, and then I'm going to move on to the other topics for tonight. It says, during the briefing, this is part of what Ballad has said, Eric Deaton said, and I'm quoting, we ran the scenario really utilizing the more aggressive Delta variant, making an impact for us. So we're running now probably 44 to 50 patients per day. We expect, as we have more spread of the COVID variant start to happen in the coming months, as school starts back, as we see more and more people moving towards the inside events and really being closer together, we'll start to see a greater spread of COVID-19 through the Delta variant. Right now, the system can house 75 COVID-19 patients. By late or mid-October, we're expecting to see back over 120 patients in-house. One of the things that Alan said that I want you all to hear is he actually stated that he believed that this would be, here it is. He says, and I'm quoting, this is Alan, as we see an increased number of COVID cases that end up in the emergency room or the hospital, and as we go into the fall, and if we can see an increase, and if we see an increase of flu cases, I think this is going to bring not just Ballad, but I think the healthcare system as a whole really closer to a breaking point. Did you hear Alan Levine say that this next wave is going to bring Ballad Health closer to a breaking point? Guys, you and I know, so listen to me. I need to stress this to you. I explained to you when I read to you the SEC documents. So when Ballad Health filed their SEC documents and they provided that information in their projections, right, for the revenue that they were going to create, they literally spelled out in the SEC documents that the profits that they were projecting, right, when they refinanced the bonds and all that good stuff, they absolutely said that the profits that they were projecting would have to come from merger synergies, right, and other cutbacks. So keep in mind, Ballad told them, we don't have this money that we're projecting. They've had to remember when they got rid of voluntary surgeries. So that revenue is down. And if this continues, they'll have to do the same thing again. So they will not have that revenue coming in. They were already in financial trouble prior to this. They were a healthcare system that combined together is worth $3 billion, and they had $1.5 million in debt almost, right? It was $1.2 billion, not million, billion. So, I mean, I'm got my words crossed. $3 billion and $1.2 billion of debt. So a third, over a third, damn near a half. You all should be concerned, because what are you going to do if they do reach their breaking point? And what does healthcare look like for you, your families, and your children? If you think it's bad now, what will it look like then? Seriously. I'm just saying. I said earlier in this broadcast that a lot of the people who are refusing to get the vaccine are Christians, right? You and I have seen the vaccine cards that say, you know, vaccinated by the Lord or whatever. And people saying, we're just not going to do that. And I'm going to use that as a segue into the hypocrisy of the church, right? Of Christianity, and specifically the Catholic Church. Today, what we saw was the first ever former cardinal for the Catholic Church be charged for sexually assaulting a 14-year-old child who's now a grown adult and a grown man. And it's the first time ever. And one of the things that astounds me is, number one, that's huge. And it's frustrating that it hasn't happened before now. And I'm going to give you some numbers. And I pulled this information from HermanLaw.com. They are a law firm that specifically this is what they specialize in, which are, you know, people who were abused as children by priests or cardinals or, you know, clergy. And this is their specialty. And so they are an expert in this area. And I want to give you some data because I talked a little bit on Monday about how, you know, the Christian churches and different denominations, including the Catholic denomination, ran the Indian boarding schools. And I was talking to you all about, you know, the controversy around critical race theory and what is it really? And I explained that it is not about shaming your children or telling your children they should be ashamed to be white. It is not about, you know, any of that. It's about educating people and teaching history from different perspectives, including those that are non-white. And so I talked a little bit about government-funded Indian boarding schools and the laws that were passed that enabled the government to come in and take Indian children from the reservations, from their families, and force them to attend these schools. We talked about the number of deaths that occurred, these children that died, that were starved, that were abused sexually, and so forth and so on. And this is something that's been rampant within the Catholic Church. So I'm going to give you something. So the Catholic Church spent around listen to this, the Catholic Church spent around $200 million in legal settlements from June 2017 to June 2018. $200 million in settlements for sexual assault and sexual abuse cases of children. As of April 27th in 2019, the New York Independent Reconciliation Compensation Program awarded a total of $65 million, get this, to 323 sexual abuse victims. Did y'all hear what I said? $65 million to 323 sexual abuse victims. So some of the nation's largest settlements in sexual abuse cases went to clergy child sex abuse survivors in California. And here's what it says. The Boston Globe had a shocking report, an astonishing report in 2002. And after that report, California became the first state to temporarily lift its statute of limitations, giving adult victims of childhood sexual abuse 12 months to file lawsuits, no matter how long ago that abuse took place. During the following year, when they lifted that, hundreds of people filed lawsuits against the Archdiocese of Los Angeles. The Catholic Church, get this, ultimately settled cases for over 550 plaintiffs, paying out a total of $660 million just in California. And in San Diego, 140 plaintiffs who sued the Archdiocese of San Diego for clergy abuse received nearly $200 million from the Catholic Church. Y'all do the math. Y'all do the math. That's over $1 billion I just talked to you about. Over $1 billion. And you're going to tell me that the Catholic Church doesn't know they have a problem? The Vatican reported that Pope John Paul II knew about the abuse but failed to do anything about it. According to a report by the Associated Press and NBC, nearly 1,700 credibly accused priests and other religious figures flew under the radar with the help of the leaders in the Roman Catholic Church with little to no oversight from religious authorities or law enforcement. 1,700 predators. And those are just the ones that were credibly accused. I don't know who determines what's credible and what's not, but somebody did. 1,700. Talk to me, seriously. I need someone to talk to me when you have this avid defense of the way that Christianity is portrayed in the church. And when we talk about the role that Christianity played in the genocide against Indian children and indigenous peoples in this country, when we talk about the role that the church played in slavery and in the civil rights movement, when we talk about the role the church has played when it comes to sexism and attacks on women, I need someone to explain to me how that represents Jesus and love. Anybody? And this is not an attack on Christianity. This is an attack on the institutions and the systems that are misrepresenting what God intended. I know some of y'all are going to be mad at me, right? But I believe, and I believe there is evidence that mankind, human beings, the people in positions of power that are running these systems have taken your faith and your love of God and misused it and manipulated it to damage our children, to commit genocide, to abuse literally hundreds of people. And not only did they do it, they have spent over $1 billion making settlements and hush money and legal fees. Listen, I'm going to say this again for those of you who are going to be mad at me. I am not bashing Christianity. I am not saying that it's like false fiction. I'm not saying any of that. What I am saying is that human beings in positions of power, typically white males in the church, right? Because the Catholic Church said, you know, women shouldn't preach and all that good stuff. Those people took your love of Jesus and they twisted what God intended and let that power put them in positions to do really horrible things to people. And here's the thing, folks. If Christianity is your faith and is your religion, speak up and fight for it. Do not let these things go on and continue in the name of God, in the name of Christianity. So why is it a big deal? There's a lot of money in the Catholic Church, a ton of money. And you and I know that money equals power in this world. that we live in. So to see charges finally be brought indicates a shift in that power. It indicates a time where systems and structures that have been in place for a really long time are being challenged, are starting to be held accountable. And that is why you see the pushback that you do. Now, if someone disagrees with me, please share with me why. Don't just get mad and leave the live. I am open to conversing about this. Yep. Don't forget, the Boy Scouts of America just settled an $850 million suit for similar issues. It also took place several decades after the beginning of the cases. And this is the thing, right? We have to speak truth to power and fight these systems if we truly care about each other, if we truly have this love of God, no matter what religion you subscribe to, right? Or if you don't subscribe to any, right? Whether you have religion or faith or not, for me, God is love. If I could just make it the most basic thing ever, right? So whether you have a religious affiliation, denomination or not, right? If you just simply believe in loving each other and people, and that we are better if we do that, then we have to speak up and we have to hold these people accountable, and we have to share that information. You cannot be silent. I said that in yesterday's podcast. Silence is complicity. You cannot be silent. You must speak up. You must speak out. So, let me finish this. This is the part that really turns my stomach. Because according to NCBI, most of the victims that clergy abuse are children. The mean age of these victims is 12. 2/3 of those affected are 13 years old or younger when their first encounter with sexual abuse occurs. And just over 25% of them are aged 14 and older. 12 years old. That's the mean age of these victims. So if you are a Christian, how do you not care? If you are a Christian and Catholic, how do you not care? How do we not talk about these issues? Because these things matter. They matter. They absolutely matter. And now I'm going to move on to this last one. And some of you guys may not even know who this is. But I saw a lot of comments today because of the rapper DaBaby. How many of you guys know who DaBaby is? Like he's local, homegrown in Charlotte, North Carolina. In the last year or so, he has really, really blown up. And yes, Ethan Cruz, I agree. Ethan says innocence is the draw. We should protect the kids. One of the things that I saw too, I'm going to give you the hermanlaw.com website in case this, maybe this is relevant to you, but if nothing else, you can see where I got a lot of the information that I shared with you tonight comes from. So I'm going to put that up there. But so if you're watching, do you know who DaBaby is? Some of you probably don't. But I know people who listen to his music, and there was some comments. There was a lot of people today going, oh, well, I don't think that what DaBaby said was homophobic and da-da-da-da. And you all know me. I believe in advocating for everybody, including LGBTQIA people, and in addressing things that are just ignorant, that perpetuate some of the hate and some of the misinformation around them and their community, right? Doesn't matter that I'm straight, I can advocate for other people, right? People who are different than me. So what I'm going to do, and this is the first time I'm trying this feature, so pray to God that it works. I am going to share, I'm going to share this video. It's going to let me do that. This video right now is from, Oh, Jesus. Now it says I have to convert the video. So hold on. Let me see if I can. I don't know how to do this. I'm not sure that I can do this. I'm going to play it and you'll be able to hear it. Okay. So sorry, but just stick with me, folks. So DaBaby was at a concert for Rolling Loud and it streamed live. And I want you to listen to what was said because people are trying to say that he wasn't being homophobic in his comments. And I believe when you listen to it, that he clearly was. So I'm going to play it for me. Let me know, please, if you can't hear it. Okay. Please, if you can't hear it, let me know. Let me turn this up.
You didn't show up today with HIV, AIDS, any of them deadly sexually transmitted diseases that'll make you die in 2-3 weeks. Put a cell phone like the lady, if your pussy smell like water, put a cell phone like the fellas. Lights up. Fellas, if you ain't sucking nigga dick in the parking lot, put your cell phone like that. Let's be real about this shit. Yeah, keep it fucking real. Some of y'all niggas suspect as a motherfucker. Let's be real.
Okay, so I should have issued a disclaimer that he used a lot of foul language and it might be offensive because that he did. But so first thing he said, first of all, could you all hear it? Yes, no, could you hear it? Because to me, the comments are disgusting. The first thing he says is if you didn't show up today with HIV, AIDS, or any of them deadly sexually transmitted diseases that'll make you die in 2 or 3 weeks, then put your cell phone lighter up. Thanks, Ethan. And then he says, ladies, if your whatever smells like water, put your lighter up. Then he says, fellas, if you ain't basically having oral sex in the parking lot of the concert, put your cell phone lighter up. So when you specifically say to men, if you're not giving oral sex to a male, because he said sucking D-I-C-K, right? Then you are targeting gay men, or at least bisexual men, right? You are targeting LGBTQIA people. And then when your boy in the background says, yeah, let's keep it real, some of y'all are suspect, right? And he says, yeah, let's keep it effing real. When you say a man is suspect and you're talking about his sexual orientation, you are in fact being homophobic. When you equate the LGBTQIA community with HIV, you are being homophobic and you are contributing to the misinformation surrounding HIV. There are many ways, many people who have HIV that A, aren't gay, right? B, may not have gotten it through sexually transmitted diseases, right? Through sex. They could have gotten it, you know, when HIV first happened and it was this pandemic, right? And I remember because it was in the 80s, right? So I was a teenager and I remember the rhetoric around HIV and how it was really used to attack the gay community. And they were demonized for it and as if this was their disease and their disease only. And we did not have the systems in place in terms of healthcare providers and healthcare systems to check blood. And there were people who got HIV because of blood transfusions. There were people who got HIV for a number of reasons. And if you read the statistics, right, gay men actually tend to be less sexually promiscuous than heterosexual men. If you actually read the data. And Ethan, I do believe it's pretty clear what he meant. Because he says, he addresses the women. He says, women, if your vagina smells like water, put your cell phone light up, right? Those are the women he's talking to. And then he says, fellas, if you ain't performing oral sex on another man in the parking lot, put your lighter up. That's pretty clear. You're talking to gay men. And then he went and he did a live video on IG talking about how he wasn't being homophobic and his gay fans, they're not nasty like that. And they ain't doing that in a parking lot. They're doing it in 5-star hotels and blah, blah. If they're his fans, they're da, 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 da. Listen, there's no way to slice this or dice this or make it be anything other than it was. He was, in fact, being homophobic. And he was contributing to the misinformation of HIV and AIDS when he associated that disease with the LGBTQIA community. Period. And people who are defending him saying, I can't get with you. I can't get with you. And I can't get behind him. I mean, not that I really ever liked his music. Anyway, he's just not my type of person. He's not my type of, and I do like hip hop. I'm not a fan. So, but I wanted to address that because, and I know that some of you guys may not know who he is. Some of you guys are like, holy crap. Because some of you followed me when I was covering only politics or I was focusing on politics. And some of you started following me when I was focusing on Ballad health. And I really want to start to use these lives and this platform to address all different types of issues, things that I really believe matter. And, if I can use my voice to address the wrongs and to point out, how things really are and why we shouldn't be saying things like this. And why they are negative and why they are not in the best interest of us as human beings together, then I want to do that. So I appreciate you all hanging with me as we become a little bit more diverse in the things that we talk about. And this one was such a big issue. Like, it's national. Like, if you go and you just Google DaBaby comments, there are all kinds of celebrities and people in the music industry. Elton John, his AIDS Foundation put out a statement around this. Like, this is a real issue. This is a real issue. And I didn't think, if I'm being honest, guys, I didn't think about everything that he said before I played it. And I apologize for like the verbiage that he used. And I had, so I saw somebody's post and they were like, oh, he just said if people were having oral sex, but he didn't. He specifically said men. He said fellas. Ladies, he addressed one way, and fellas, he addressed another. You were being homophobic. And there's no other way to slice it and say it, And that's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it. So that's all I have for you tonight. I know that it was a very diverse group of topics, but I think that they all matter because they all have to do with how we treat each other. They all have to do with our health and well-being, and they all have to do with clarifying, misinformation, whether that misinformation is around the vaccine, whether that misinformation is around HIV and AIDS, whether that misinformation is around the LGBTQIA community. So I'm going to talk about all of them. So Jessica Christian says, love these conversations and that there are really other people in the world that's caring and open minded and limited in my area. Oh, and thank you. You've been a great teacher through the talks. That to me, yes, Ebony, he is just embarrassing. Correct. I agree, Eb. He really is. I just need him to shut up. I listened to his explanation of what he said, and I was like, if you don't shut up. Like, at this point, whoever his PR people are need to get him off of social media and have a chat. Hey, thanks, Melissa. I appreciate that. So, again, at my core, the goal, and the reason why I started doing podcasts and broadcast anyway, was to be able to have challenging, controversial, different conversations in order for us to all learn and grow together and hopefully bring about connection and change. Because I believe the more that we connect with each other and the more that we tackle these different issues, then the more likely and the more we increase our ability to improve the world that we live in, right? Heaven is a great idea, but I don't want to have to wait till I die to see goodness, right? And I think, while we can and we are on this earth, we should do everything possible to create heaven on earth. And sometimes that means speaking truth to power. Sometimes that means, like I said, even Jesus turned over tables. Jesus was not a fan of the church either. Don't forget that, y'all. Don't forget that. Those of you all who've gotten upset with me when I talk about the Christian church, and remember, the Christian church today is the Pharisee church of old. And Jesus was not a fan of that. And he was not a fan of the way that they used it and what they did to people with it. And if you want to be like Jesus, think, what would Jesus do? Jesus would not cover up the sexual abuse of over 1,700 Catholic or clergy, regardless of the denomination. Jesus wouldn't do that. And we shouldn't either. We should not allow that to happen. That's my belief. So I appreciate you all. Thanks for sticking with me. I will see you again on Monday night. I have a guest that I'm very excited about. And then I also have a guest for Thursday evening. Go me. I've got to confirm one more for the following week. So it's not just going to be me every time. I'm going to be bringing people. The guest that I'm bringing on Monday is Max Parthas. He is an abolitionist. He has been working with other folks and activists all across the country to abolish legislation that exists in state constitutions that allows for slavery. And right now he is working on that in Tennessee. He's actually meeting with some Tennessee representatives. There's a resolution that is going to Congress. And so I'm going to talk to him about that. And I'm going to reach out to the representative that he's meeting with that has sponsored this resolution. And we are going to talk about that on Monday because, guys, it is still legal to have slavery in this country. And we have to address that, because at the end of the day, even people who do quote unquote bad things are still human beings. And we need to be treating them as such, So that's all I got for you tonight, y'all. Be amazing. Be light, be love. Peace.